this, that would make sense.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Schaumburg Library, or the Schaumburg Library's Zoom profile. We are so happy to have you all with us this evening. If you're on Zoom and you can't hear me, I am so sorry. I'll be back there in a second. No one's looking at it if I'm up here. But welcome on in to Stress Less, Live More with Dr. Lisa Ergang. I said it first so I wouldn't forget how to say it and panic. Lisa has been a professional psychiatrist, not psychologist.
Psychologist.
Psychologist. I always confuse those
Everybody
two.
does.
Professional psychologist for so long that even she cannot remember. So she is therefore a wealth of knowledge for all of you here and online with us. Just a few friendly reminders for our in-person audience and our Zoom audience. Starting with our Zoom audience, your cameras and microphones have been turned off. So if at any point during the presentation you have a question, please don't hesitate to reach out to me using the Q&A function. I'll be able to go back and forth with you there. You can also use the Q&A to ask any questions of this evening's presenter. We'll handle the questions at the end of the program, but make sure you're throwing those in as we go so you don't forget them later on. You'll also see that closed captions has been enabled as well. For our in-person audience, in terms of Q&A, if you've been to an in-person program with me before, you know the drill. I have to come over to you with my microphone, I'll unclip it so I'm not just awkwardly leaning into you, and I'll hold it in front of you so that our online audience will be able to hear your questions. So if you have questions at the end for our presenter, throw those hands high in the air and I will come running. Don't worry, online audience, I'll be bouncing back and forth between them and you. You'll both get equal amounts of Q&A love. Also for our in-person audience, if you could take a moment to just silence your cell phones and any other electronic device that may make noise during the program today, that would be wonderful. All right, without further ado, I'm gonna turn things over. Everyone please give a big round of applause for Dr. Lisa Ergang.
Hi, everyone. I am not used to using a mic, so it's gonna be a little bit awkward for me. We'll just deal with that. As Chris said, my name is Dr. Lisa Ergang. I am a clinical psychologist and owner of Relationship Solutions Center, PC, where our mission is to transform lives and relationships from the inside out. We offer a holistic approach to understanding human pain and suffering, with services ranging from therapy to assisting with family law issues pertaining to parenting and or divorce. I invite you to follow our Facebook page because that's where you're going to get the most frequent updates, announcements, blog posts, just information we want to share. So if you just go on Facebook and look for Relationship Solutions Center, you'll be able to follow us that way. All right. So first, let me make sure for the audience here, can you hear me all okay? Okay, great. Can you hear me on that side? Thank you. I probably will be moving around, but at least I know what volume I need to speak at. So thank you for joining me tonight to talk about Stress Less, Live More. I want to set the stage for what's going to be happening over the next hour that we have together, so you know what to expect. Over this next hour, you're going to be learning from me, but there are also going to be times when you're going to be learning from each other. So I'm hoping that some of you are comfortable sharing answers and you feel safe enough to do that. Hopefully nothing is going to feel way too personal to share. And if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. No big deal. That being said, it would be really helpful, I know Chris said it already, but if you haven't already, to put your phone on silent and away so it's not a big distraction to you. I talk a lot all day, so I'm always drinking water. Give me one sec. Okay, so thanks so much for your cooperation. I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate you coming out tonight. I know some people walked in later than others. Did you happen to grab the handout that was in the back? If you wouldn't, you're going to have to grab the handouts that are back there if you came in and haven't grabbed one already. Hopefully all of you on Zoom were able to get the handout that was emailed to you late this afternoon. If not, no big deal, just a plain piece of paper will work. Great, thank you. All right, so we're going to jump right in with a little activity. When I'm done explaining the activity, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to write down the top 3 reasons you decided to come to this workshop. So what were you thinking about? Maybe you've been having trouble transitioning back to a school year. Maybe you have noticed maybe you've been more irritable lately. Or maybe you're just kind of curious what I can possibly have to share with you. So I'm going to give you another second or so. I see people trying to dig around for some writing instruments. And then go ahead, and I'm going to give you 60 seconds to write down what you are thinking about when you registered. You have about 10 more seconds. Hopefully that's enough time for everybody. And if this is a good place, Chris, if people want to respond, can they do that in the Q&A? Is that the easiest place?
They can do it in the chat, and I've already encouraged them to.
Okay, great. Thank you. Alrighty, so if anybody's comfortable, would love to hear some of the reasons why you decided to come to this workshop. Does anybody want to share any of their reasons why? And I'll pre-warn, I am not a teacher, so I don't have nice teacher handwriting, and I'm a lefty, so who knows what it's going to look like, but we'll try. Yeah.
Well, I know it's stupid to stress about things you can't control, but I do. And
Okay.
I feel stupid doing it, but I always catch myself.
Good.
I say to myself, but you have no say over that.
That's right.
Not something you can control. And then I still feel stressed about it.
Because you don't know what else to do.
Well, I haven't seemed to be able to quiet that person in my brain.
Okay. Let's quiet the brain, right? Not at all. Okay, anybody else? Yep.
It seems to me that stress hits on several levels. The personal stress of aging, of health, relationship stress, and then now this cosmic stress, like they turn on the news just to catch the weather. And this person wins the election, the economy will come to a halt. If this person wins the election, there'll be World War III. So it's all crazy.
It's everywhere. You can't really get away from it, so you have to learn how to deal with it, right? Okay, so stress is everywhere. Almost forgot the W. Okay, anybody else? Yep, Chris?
We have someone from online who is stressed because they are returning to work after a 9-year career break.
Ooh, that's a long time. Okay, return to work. Maybe 1 or 2 more answers? I think I saw a hand over here. Go ahead in the pink.
I get stressed out over the rapid change of technology and trying to keep up with all this stuff.
Keep up with all the changes. And we'll take that last one. What was yours? Oops, I caught you off guard. What was your reason?
I would like to notice or to know if some of my loved ones or some near to me suffering stress, what can I do?
So I'm not sure if I heard all of it. Can you say that one more time?
Okay. I would like to notice if some of my loved ones
Loved ones.
or close to me, they suffering stress.
You want to notice it in other people so you can be a support person? Okay, that's great. Ooh, that's a bad bee. These are all really good reasons to be here tonight. And I pretty much think we're going to end up covering all these areas. So if we don't, yeah.
Yeah, how about the stress of recent retirement and the change of life?
So again, big changes, right? Change is always difficult for people to handle. They're always difficult. Yeah.
I found mental health.
Okay, similar.
My cats feel my stress and are acting out.
Okay. Her cats are feeling the stress, and so they're acting out. And so you can kind of use that as a thermometer for how well you're managing your stress. Is one way to think of that. Absolutely. Decisions are hard to make because it's that whole idea of committing to something. Yep.
Have you seen how many types of Oreos there are now?
It's getting more and more difficult.
I mean, hundreds of different, there's hardly room on the shelves for anything but Oreos.
I agree.
You want an Oreo, but how do you even? This is too
Yeah. Okay, one flavor at a time. All right, so thank you for everybody who was willing to put themselves out there. I appreciate your vulnerability. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of different things that are bringing you in, although there's similarities between them that you might notice as we keep talking. By the way, I have so much information in my head I want to give you, but then I have to slow myself down, and what happens is I talk really fast. So if you ever experience me is talking too fast, just kind of raise your hand and ask me to slow down. Okay. There's really good news, even going through all these. You're going to leave here today with at least 3 different ideas of how to manage your stress that you probably aren't already doing. So that's something I feel like I can comfortably promise you today. All right. So before we start talking about techniques, I want to talk more about like what does stress actually mean, and I want to get us all on the same page. And we're going to do that. So I don't need that right now. When it comes to defining emotions, I want to pull this off so you can see the title. I lean on this book a lot. It's called Atlas of the Heart. It was written by Brené Brown. Has anybody here heard of Brené Brown? Chris is like pumping his hands here. She's amazing. She is one of my heroes in the mental health field. So Brené is a social worker, teacher at the University of, is it Texas or Austin? Hold on, I always get them confused. But I wrote it down. Oh my gosh, I thought I wrote it down.
It's the University of Texas.
It's, how'd I know that was going to happen?
Now you're really stressed.
Good thing I'm prepared for things to go wrong. Can you feel my stress? I don't think I'm stressed, actually. I do, but not, more like I'm warm. I get warm easily. So I'm like, and there's a lot of you, and I want to make sure you can hear me. That's my biggest thing right now. So anyway, Brene, she calls herself a storyteller and a researcher and a teacher. She has a really great podcast. It's called Unlocking Us. She's done a Netflix special. She's done several TED Talks. And she had an HBO special that came out shortly after her book in 2021. And the HBO special actually is based on the book. So I don't know how you access it now if you don't have HBO, because I feel like it's on a streaming service, but I don't know where at this point. This book is what I call an emotion dictionary. So that's how I talk about it when I'm with my clients in my office. She has 87 emotions in here and has researched each emotion extensively before deciding to put it in the book or not. So when I'm in a session with somebody and we come across an emotion that they don't know or they're uncomfortable with or they're not quite sure how to define, a lot of times I'll just pull the book out and let's like see what she has to say. So I did that for you. I pulled out stress, and here's what she's got to say about that. University of Houston, actually. I did write it down. Okay. So, want to kind of give you a sense of the way she breaks down the book. These feelings, stress, overwhelm, anxiety, worry, avoidance, excitement, dread, fear, and vulnerability are all emotions she categorizes as places we go when things are uncertain or too much. So that's the way the whole book is broken down. Every cluster of emotion is a place we go when, and then she describes where you're going, and then how the emotions are tied together. So if you think about that list of emotions that I just went through, listen again. Places we go when things are uncertain or too much. Stress, overwhelm, anxiety, worry, avoidance, excitement, dread, fear, and vulnerability. So I wanted to give you a sense of, like, she didn't have an actual definition of stress more than she had a description of stress. So the description of stress is the feeling we get when we think our environment is just too much for us and we can't handle it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It involves surprises, things we can't control, and that overwhelming sense of being burdened. Okay? So in simpler terms, it's like looking at that to-do list and thinking to yourself, there's no way I'm ever going to get this done. I imagine you've all had that experience. It's probably why you're here, right? And here's the thing I say about the to-do list. You will never get it done. It will never be an empty list. Because we take things off, we put things on, we take things off, we put things on. So it's really more a matter of learning how to manage a to-do list and break it down into things like things that need to be done immediately, things that are long-term projects, and then how are we breaking down our long-term projects. Things that are hard to tackle, things that are easier to tackle. There's so many different things we can do with a to-do list that, like, that could be a whole hour in and of itself. Okay. So, one of the first things I want to point out here is that I notice a lot of people use the words stress and anxiety interchangeably, and they're not the same. they're not. Well, here's how I'm going to tell you why they're not the same, but I can certainly take the head count if you want and see, because I hear it all the time, that people don't know how to distinguish between stress and anxiety. Okay. And it makes it harder because the emotions are in the same family, as we just heard. They're all emotions that we experience when there's unknown or too much. The key difference is that anxiety can be a trait or it can be a state. So a trait is a personality characteristic. I bet you some of you know or consider yourselves an anxious person. You almost always have some sort of anxiety, right? And so that's a state of anxiety. Sorry, that's a trait of anxiety. That when I have somebody in my room and I ask them, one of the first questions I ask people is like, how would you describe yourself? I want to get to know who you are. How would you describe you? And there are a lot of people who will name themselves as anxious. And so that's how, that's a way that it becomes a description of who you are. Versus a state, which is how I feel right now. I feel anxious right now. It's temporary. You can actually move past anxiety. You can learn more about, and stress. You can learn more about both of those and how to manage them. That's why we're here today. But with stress, it is also a state that you are in. Any emotion that is not about describing how you are as a person, like that person's always depressed, that would be a trait. But that person is suffering from depression would be a state. Does that make sense? Does anybody need me to clarify that in any other way? Okay.
So you could say the same thing about stress.
Yes,
So what's the difference?
I'm not there yet. The main difference is that anxiety often comes from a place of fear. That if you peek underneath your anxiety and you say, why am I anxious? What's going on? Usually, you'll have some sort of answer like, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of disappointing people. I'm afraid of getting it wrong. I'm afraid of whatever, fill in the blank. That's usually anxiety. Okay? With stress, it's more about I can't get it done versus if I don't get it done, there's something bad about me or some fear I have. So that's the biggest way to set apart anxiety from stress. Any questions about that? Okay. So back to stress. There is a level of stress that is considered healthy. I wanted to see if anybody's jaw dropped. Yes, there is. And since the other one didn't pull off as well, let me see if I can get this one too. Nope, we're gonna do it the old-fashioned way. So, would it surprise you to know that you couldn't be productive if you didn't have any stress?
Well, some people say they work better under stress.
Yes.
Or deadline. If something is
Yes.
tomorrow, they would do it better if they would do it the next minute.
Yeah, and that's a whole different thing because that's more about, so I'm not used to, I didn't have a thing to hook this on. So that's kind of where some of my stress is coming from. that's more about perfectionism. When I talk to people and they say, you know, I need that deadline, there's a lot of perfectionism going on underneath there. Okay. All right. Has anybody ever heard of the Yerkes-Dodson law? Okay. I didn't think so. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you. I want to make sure I put that on properly. So this is called a bell curve. A bell curve, B-E-L-L.
Shaped like a bell.
Shaped like a bell, upside down. Okay? And in the world of like mathematics and science, this is where you'll see it a lot. In a bell curve, we have these little areas here called tails.
Called what?
Tail. Like your tail, you're gonna wag your tail? Okay? So this is a too low. Oops. This is too high. And there are certain percentages mathematically that fall under the tail. I want to say 37.5 or something like that. 37.5 this way, 37.5 this way. So in most, when we measure behavior or an emotion, we want it primarily up here. This is the ideal place of functioning in this top area. With stress, if you don't have enough, if you're too low, what's going to happen is you're going to do nothing. Because you have no motivation, no oomph. And some people might experience that as boredom. They're going to call that boredom. Okay? But as your stress level increases, what's going to happen here is we're going to become more alert. And then you're going to become engaged with your material. And then you're in this place where you find a nice kind of challenge. You're learning something. You're understanding something. You're feeling accomplished because you're getting things done. It feels really good to be up here. But if you keep the level of stress increasing, it's not going to keep going up. It goes down the bell curve. And what happens when you go down the bell curve, this is where you start feeling not only the stress increases, but this is where also, if those surprises that we've talked about, like in life happen, that you're not prepared for, or that there's something that happens that's out of your control, it's going to keep pushing the stress level. And so at that point, you're going to start to feel fatigued. Or exhausted.
You know that we can't actually do that, right?
I know, but I kind of feel like I have to write it.
Say it, you don't have to write it.
And then, but if it gets down to the tail, that means you're at either burnout or you've broken down. Like some people will say, you know, I had a breakdown. That usually means they've gotten into this tail, okay? And this is coming off.
It's important to understand
have lots of suggestions. Yeah, you do.
Done better.
I can try it both ways. How about that? So conceptually, does this make sense to you? Okay. Now, what's really important is that you intervene at the right time. Because if you wait to intervene until you're here, it's not going to go as well. It's going to take you a lot longer. It can be done. It's just going to be harder. First is if you start intervening once you're up here, you bring yourself back down this way versus pushing yourself over the edge. So in terms of having the right tools to use and then implementing at the right time, you want to implement when you're still in that place of challenge because you're enjoying the challenge, but you don't want it to get too far. Okay? All right. This is a good time for me to ask if there's any questions before I go on. Yep.
I don't know if you want to wait until the end for this. We do have a question from an online attendee. It's a very specific, like, stress thing they're handling with. So do you want to take those now?
Sure.
Great. How can one deal with an unorganized manager who works consistently at the last minute and doesn't approve documents that are sent, reminders being ignored?
Okay. So the manager's behavior is under your control, is not under your control, right? A lot of times, that's where it becomes learn to let go of what's not in your control. If your manager's not doing their job, it's not your job to make them do their job. And I know what they're probably thinking is, but it affects my job, right? Because it does. And then there are definitely assertiveness tools that you can use in trying to communicate clearly and professionally with your manager, generally from an I statement standpoint. I wanted to talk to you because I've been really stressed that I'm not meeting my deadlines. And I've noticed that sometimes what's getting in the way is me waiting for other people to give me work. I'm wondering what you think I could be doing differently to help my coworkers, whether or not they realize it's them, to give me things in a timely manner. Would be one potential way of saying what you want to say. But that is definitely a very specific and something that's easier answered if I had details that's not appropriate for like this kind of forum. Yeah. Did anybody else have questions?
What does Xerxes Dotson law actually say, quote unquote?
What they're saying is you want to stay in that place of challenge so that you can consistently get things done. I get a task done, I feel good, I check it off my list, I still have enough energy to get another task done, and I just keep going. Because if I start losing energy, I'm going into that place of fatigue, which means I'm not doing good self-care. Or I'm not doing so good self-care, so I can't even get to the place of alert and engaged. So it's all about like balancing and managing your self-care. So that's what that's saying. Does that make sense to you now? Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right.
Yeah, it says kind of a standard deviation. type
Yes.
system.
Yes. So the tails are in the third standard deviation. Yep. All right. So now we're going to do a little activity. How many of you here do deep breathing? Oh, that's a nice number. Okay, great. Where do you, like, if you can show me just by putting your hands wherever, Where do you think you need to get your breath down to in order to be doing a deep breath? Here, around your belly button. A lot of people think that if they go, that's a deep breath. That's not a deep breath. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to do deep breathing. And I'm going to talk you through it first before we actually do it, because I find that when I do it and talk at the same time, it just doesn't work. Okay, so backing up, deep breathing is my favorite stress management technique to teach because it is the most portable technique you can have. You can take it anywhere. You can take it to the grocery store. You can take it to your friend's house. You can take it into traffic. Nobody's going to know you're doing it unless you're making exaggerated examples of it. So I can put this down. I'm going to stay still for a bit. When you do deep breathing, I do it in a triangle format. If you go online and you search deep breathing, you're going to find all different variations. Like I said, I've been doing this for a really long time. Most of my people do really well with the triangle. It's not asking a lot. So basically what you do is you slow inhale to the count of 3. Then you hold it for the count of 3. And then you exhale slowly again for the count of 3. Makes it really easy. Triangle, 3, 3, 3. Okay? And when you inhale, again, you're not going to notice it because I can't do it, expanding it the way I really want to show you. But when you inhale through your nose, not your mouth, you inhale, you want expansion. You don't want to go like this because then you're getting stuck in your chest and in your shoulders. You want to get it down into your belly. And so what I often do is like I am visualizing where can I feel my breath right now? Am I feeling it here? Am I feeling it here? Am I feeling it here? Or is it really down by my belly button? And if I know it's not down by my belly button, I'm going to keep inhaling until I can get it there. Takes practice. You're like, whoosh. Yes, because you're not going to be able to do it the first time necessarily the right way. But we're going to practice it. So if you have anything on your lap, take it off, put it down for now. When I teach people for the first time, I generally do recommend you put your hands on your belly because that's where you're going to feel the expansion. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. And we're going to do a nice deep inhale to the count of 3. 1, inhale, 2, inhale, 3, and hold it there. And before we go further, because I want to check where you are, is everybody down in their belly? And if you're not, try again. Let it go, and then try again. Let's just do the inhale first to make sure you can get it correct. Does anybody need more time to figure out the inhale? Okay, so now we're going to go through the whole triangle. In 3, hold 3, out 3. Ready? So a nice inhale to 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 2, 3, and exhale slowly. 2, 3. Do you notice the different feeling in your body? Just having done it one time. Those who hasn't noticed a difference yet? Okay, so I'll work with you on that. The ones who feel the difference, I want you to do it 2 more times. And for those 2 over here. So I can tell already you're holding your breath here. Okay, let it go. Okay, nice, just gentle inhale. Push it down. Yep, you're getting there. I can see it. Did you get down into your belly? Okay, that's when you then hold. You can do that as many times as you want if you're doing it for relaxation. To practice it just the first time, if you've done it 3 times, you should notice a difference in your body. And if you haven't, raise your hand. Okay. So again, you're holding your breath a little bit, like just let your body go. Did you get down to your belly? So just go slower, don't rush yourself. Yeah. So that's the beauty of the triangle. Like if you're doing it right, it really only takes 3 breaths to relax your system. And what I usually do is I tell folks in the beginning, at least for the first week, practice it multiple times a day when you don't feel particularly stressed. Because you have to get your body used to what it feels like when it's more relaxed, so you know what you're shooting for. And that way, maybe by week 2, you'll notice that you're starting to hold your breath, or you're getting anxious or worried or whatever, and you can implement that. You can say, oh my gosh, remember I learned how to do deep breathing, and now I can do it. And it should make a difference. So that's one strategy I told you, by the way, you can walk out with at least 3. There's your first one right there. Any questions about that? Okay. Okay. I'm also paying attention to our time. And I'm going to jump a couple of things. Okay. When you implement one of these strategies that you're going to learn today, what you're doing is what's called emotional regulation. Have you all heard those terms before? Emotional regulation? Okay. So simply what that means when you're emotionally regulating, you are bringing your body back to a calm state. That we have what are called positive emotions and we have negative emotions. So as I hope you can imagine, positive emotions are all good things. Happiness, excitement, love, all the good stuff that makes you feel happy. We don't normally need to regulate those. It's a good place to be. Normally, we need to regulate a negative emotion. So obviously stress and anxiety, but also feeling confused, some people would say feeling stupid, feeling unloved, feeling anything negative. We don't want to be in that place because it doesn't feel good. And it also makes it difficult for us to do things. So regulating means coming out of the bad space back into the neutral space. So the strategies you're going to be learning can all be emotional regulation strategies. It's just a different terminology that you might hear in certain places that you wouldn't hear in others. Okay. So there are 4 steps to emotional regulation. I think that's one of the things I put on your handout. If you want to fill them in, is that one of the things? Because pretty much anything on that handout is something that we're supposed to be talking about. Yes, is it? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to double check. So the first thing is awareness, or you'll hear it called mindfulness. It's really hard to change something if you're not aware of it. There are ways that we can, from a psychological standpoint, we can do what's called pure behavior training and change your behavior. It's not going to stick because you're not doing it with intention. When you change with intention, it's more likely to stick. And in order to change it with intention, you need to be mindful of it. You need to be aware that it's happening. So one example I can give you is almost every person who walks in my door uses the word should a lot. And that's probably the first word I'm going to work with them on, because to me, the word should is a very shaming word, because the idea being that if you're not doing what you should be doing, you're bad in some way, shape, or form. Most things in this world are not a should. You should breathe. If you're not breathing, let go, keep breathing. You should pay your taxes. You know, we have services that need to get paid for, like this lovely library, right? The example I give in Illinois, super easy. We have a rule of the road that says we're allowed to turn right on red if we think we're safe and we can make it.
And there are no cameras.
No, there could be cameras. Now, the way that law gets interpreted frequently is you should turn right on red if the person behind you thinks you have time to go, right? They're not sitting in your driver's seat. They don't know how well you accelerate. They don't know about your response times. They don't know anything about what's happening in your driver's seat. But there's this expectation that you should go. But it's not. So I often bring people to the awareness of the word should. That's like the first word like I attack. So anytime we say it in session, it's like, oh, there it goes again. It's there. Did you hear it? Sometimes you can say it they can say it 5 or 6 times and not even notice it. So just notice it. Because once you start noticing it, then you can create change. And that change sometimes is physiological. So when you're stressed or anxious, usually things happen in our body. There's a sensation of some sort of a physiological change. Like, for example, like I sweat. What do you guys notice when you're having stress or anxiety in your body?
My heart beats fast.
Your heart beats faster. Heat. What else? Heat. Heat. Palm sweating. Anybody else?
My tummy clenches.
Your tummy, right? Like, or those butterflies in the tummy? Yes. Yeah, you might shake a little bit. Those are physiological changes in your body. The deep breathing will help you regulate those physiological changes. Then the third thing we want to change is our mental energy. Mental meaning cognitive, things we think in our head. So with anxiety and stress, we often have not so nice thoughts in our head. What might you be saying to yourself when you're anxious or stressed? Anybody? I don't know what to do. Okay. Anybody else?
This is gonna end poorly.
This is going to end poorly. That's scary. Anybody else? Okay. You might be saying things like, I never get this right. Or, I'm really just stupid to figure this out. Or whatever. You can't succeed if you're thinking negatively. And so in therapy, oftentimes we're learning how to, what's called reframe that thought into a more negative thought, into a more positive thought. Whoosh, we don't want to do that. So this is going to end poorly. I might say it could end poorly if I do nothing different. If I do something different, it's very unlikely it's going to end poorly. or I don't know what to do. Okay, maybe I'm feeling stuck. So this is where, am I willing to ask for help? Is there someone I can talk to who's just willing to talk it through with me and problem solve? Or I might say, if you are alone and you don't feel like you can talk to anybody in a moment, I might say, do your breathing, calm your brain, so that you can then think of alternatives. What are the alternatives I'm not thinking of yet? What have I seen other people do that I'm not trying yet? If I really like the computer, what can I tap into the computer and say, what can I do different in this situation? Or how can I do blank? Because I don't know what my options are. But you have to change the mental thoughts as well. Excuse me. And then the fourth step is choosing an alternative action. So doing something that you don't normally do is the part of creating change. And I want you to remember, really important to remember, that you can't do something once or twice or 3 times and think it's going to be, you're going to do it well every time, or it's going to work every time. It's not. I can't remember the actual number, but I want to say statistically, anywhere from 30 to 60 new times do you have to do something before it's considered a learned behavior. And the 30 to 60 ranges in the frequency. So if it's something you're doing every day, you do it less times and it's a learned behavior. But if it's like a once a week or a once a month, you have to do it more often in order for it to be considered a learned behavior. So, all right. In the last, see, I slowed myself down so much. Now I have more I want to say, but I'm not going to do it all. I'm going to talk to you about my other favorite way of helping people. Is we actually have physically created toolboxes. I meant to bring mine. So I literally, the first time I did this for my oldest, who's now 21. And I realized that when we're in a place of stress, a high stress or high anxiety, our body goes into fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is the newer one. It's been around for a while now, but fawn, I never have a great definition for it, but like you fawn all over somebody. And so typically how that's used is in a trauma situation where, let's say somebody's like verbally abusive and your body has learned that the best way to deal with that kind of situation is to fawn all over the person, do whatever they want you to do so that they don't bother you, so they, whatever. So.
And say what they want to hear.
And say what they want to hear, the whole shebang, yeah. But most of us want to fight back, want to run away, or we freeze in our place. Those are the ones you're used to hearing. Those are neurological things that happen in your brain that take time to learn how to change. So, but when you're in that space, you can't think to yourself so easily, what can I do different? What other coping strategy is there, right? You get stuck. So I noticed that by making a toolbox, and in this case, I literally just went to a craft store, bought a, I don't want to call it cardboard box, or bought a box, decorated it, and called it a toolbox. And what we did was used index cards and came up with some strategies. And so now I realize that is the one thing I really wanted to bring with me. So over the years, I have collected strategies from various people. And what I do with my folks is when we're building a toolbox is, we'll just start by brainstorming in various categories. So on your sheet, I think I left a place for what are the categories that we generally look for when we're doing a toolbox. And those categories are social, spiritual, intellectual, emotional, mental or cognitive, physical, or sensual. So we'll go category by category, and I'll say to them, all right, so I'm gonna do the two hardest ones here with you, if you don't mind, because the other ones are easier once you go home. So the hard ones for folks tend to be spiritual and emotional. So can we do a little brainstorming? Okay, if I asked you, what's a spiritual thing that makes you feel better? I'm sorry? Praying. That could go in your toolbox. What else? Go to church. Yep. Anybody else? Going for a walk, right. Being in nature somehow is a spiritual technique. And so when you're creating your toolbox, you put one item on your index card. One card, one item. Because when you go through it, you just want to see one thing. And whatever catches you at the moment is the thing you're going to try. It might work in that situation, it might not, but the good news is you'll have other options once you build your box. And the box is like an ongoing thing. Like every time you learn something that makes you feel good, you put it in your box. So that when you're not feeling good, you can say, I'm really not feeling good today. What can I do? What can I do? Oh, there's my box. What can I do? And you look. The other side of that is most people forget to make sure there's joy in their life every single day. If you make a point of being mindful of creating some sense of joy in your life every single day, you are less likely to get overwhelmed by stress. It's when your bank account, like your love bank, gets depleted, you go into your red, just like a real bank account, you don't have the emotional capacity, oops, sorry about that, you don't have the emotional capacity to deal with your stressors. So every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, and sometimes it might be just go sit outside because it's nice out for 5 minutes, or talk to a friend for 5 minutes, or take a bath, or use some scented candles, or X, Y, or Z. Okay? And then I wanted to do the emotional category with you before you left. Can anybody think of what would be considered an emotional strategy to help you when you're not in a good place? I'm sorry? Yeah, that would be a great strategy, actually. I'm gonna have to add that to my box when I get back to the office. I like that. What else?
It really is true. If you smile, you can change your outlook on things.
Yep.
Then you want to cry.
Yep.
Try and smile.
Yep.
It kind of stops the crying
Yep.
reflex in its tracks, and you actually have to start laughing.
You can. There is like a smile therapy that I don't know much about, but yeah. We do know that from a physiological standpoint, You can't smile and stay in a negative headspace. You can't smile and stay negative in your thought process at the same time. I don't ask my people to do many things that I'm not willing to do myself. So other emotional strategies I would say is, so with my individual clients, the first thing we do every time they come in is they do their deep breathing, and then they tell me 3 things they're proud of themselves for from the past week. Now you can do that every day. What are 3 things I'm proud of myself for today? It might be, I went that place and I didn't really want to go, but I went anyway. It might be, that person cut me off in traffic and I didn't let it bother me. It might, like whatever it is, like you're proud of yourself for a decision you made or an action you took. Gratitude journals, gratitude jars, any kind of gratitude activity is going to be an emotional strategy. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
You can do things you like the music you like, or like exercise.
Right, so exercise falls in the physical category, right? It also happens to change your mood. So some things can go in more than one category. Because that way, if you're thinking, oh, I want to go find a physical thing right now, you still want the exercise to be in there, even though it also helps with the emotional. And sometimes you might have it, like, I want to do something emotional today, and then it might still be in there, and that might be something you choose, but it might not, but it's still an option. So if something is you can duplicate it in more than one category, do it. Any questions? By the way, those stress stars I gave out to those of you who walked in early, and those of you who didn't, I still have some left over. That's technically a strategy. It's a physical strategy. It's a sensual strategy. You're using your senses. You squeeze the star. It's a stress management technique. So that was number 2. And then all these other ones were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know we're at time. I appreciate you all still being here. I just want to make sure there are no other questions before we wrap up, even from the Zoom folks.
What would be an intellectual?
Reading. I'm trying to, this is why I wanted to bring the box, so if I forgot, I can look. I'm sorry? Doing Sudoku, yep, puzzles. Anything that like taps your intellectual stimulation, basically. And I know that there was something that I had that I didn't have a chance to copy. But if you have questions, you have my contact information on the sheets I gave you. You can certainly follow up with me and ask a question. If you leave tonight and you go, oh, I wanted to ask about blah, 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 that's fine. Just reach out. We'll be happy to answer a question. Ju? Yep.
I have a good question, to especially kind of bring us down. Since we're a library, I did check the Brene Brown book is in our collection. It is currently, believe it or not, checked out. But you can always put a hold on it using our website or any of our wonderful librarians. Are there any other books or other source materials, be it a website or a YouTube video or a film or podcast, anything?
Oh my God,
that you
so
would
many.
recommend?
So
Top
many.
3, if you have so many.
I mean, all of Brene's books are amazing. She has 5 other books, all based on the research that she's been doing throughout her career. Each book builds on the previous book. So Those are great. I know I have a list in my office. I mean, I have 2 almost full bookcases with like 4 or 5 shelves each of books. So it's kind of hard for me to think of them off the top of my head. And I know I've started to keep a list of podcasts and such because it's something I wanted to add to my website at some point. So that would be the kind of thing, if anybody's looking for something, like just email me and I can send you my list of things.
Is this the first book?
This is actually her most recent book. This was published in 21. So, so she has, like I said, five other books. The first one was called I Thought It Was Just Me, The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, Braving the Wilderness, and Dare to Lead.
So all you have to do is go there, find it.
Yeah, go find her. Yeah. And her podcast, like I said. But I will, yeah, Chris, I can certainly follow up with you and provide a list that you guys can also make available.
For sure.
So, any other questions? All right, thanks again for coming tonight. I really appreciate you being here.